I was having that conversation with Carol, and it's like, with Google changing with some of the things the way they are, testing has got to evolve to account for the new environment in which we operate. So that's going to be fun.
I'm going to like transitioning away from single variable testing. It's getting boring.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another episode of SEO Fight Club. Today, we're just going to talk some shop. So if you have questions, anything SEO related is welcome. Otherwise, we'll just pick random topics that are interesting and discuss them. The reason there's no lesson plan for today, a formal slide deck, is I've been aggressively, like weekends and evenings and getting up at 3 a.m., just coding latest updates for Cora Lite, and the SEO volatility tool. So I've done new builds of all of those, and I plan to release them this week. And so that's what I've been doing the most. Carolyn is asking, what's up on the weather tool? Are we in or out of an update? We'll come back to that. I just want to get through some of the boilerplate first, and then we'll move on from there. So let me move that, and here we go. So Carolyn, what's going on with the podcast?
I kind of want to address all that dust up, and Clint, you did a great job, but I'll let you talk about that. About LSI, and I kind of wanted to talk to the non-SEO community about, what to take away from there.
Yeah, I'll tell you, in the SEO community, LSI really is a 4-letter word.
Well, I know. I mean, I made the mistake one time of actually answering a question, and I literally got laughed out of a thread, and I was like, okay, now I know who I'm talking to. So I was like out of there.
Well, the funny thing is that I see people being super critical about LSI keywords and SEO. And there are two things here. So, like, the SEO community stole the LSI keyword inappropriately. We co-opted it for our own purposes, not me specifically, but we as a community.
Right.
And we misused it, and we use it to mean, keywords that commonly appear on pages that rank well for your target keyword. And we see people being, all upset about that because it has this other academic meaning that's unrelated to that. And they're like, well, these two things aren't the same, and you stole the name. Well, yeah, sorry about that. Not me specifically, but us as a community. But we all understand, what this means. And we've all been saying that, it's a co-opted name. It doesn't mean that academic thing. It just means these words are common on pages that rank well for your keyword. It's about, picking the ones that make sense for your content and ignoring the rest. So like Clint says on his show, it's a strategy. And what you find is those people that get so mad, they end up saying, LSI isn't a thing, but these co-occurring terms on pages, now that's the thing. As if it's not just a different name for the exact same thing. And so really what I see that debate being is just a big bunch of fuss about not liking the name.
Mm-hmm. Right. It actually, and it really doesn't move the conversation forward.
Yeah, it doesn't, because they start talking about these co-occurring terms that appear on pages that rank well. Well, that's what our industry has been using LSI keywords to mean. Like, it's just a different name for the exact same thing. And you're saying one doesn't work, but the other does, but you're defining them exactly the same and giving it a different name.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make it almost like a public apology to the non-SEO community. Like, please pay no attention. That kind of-
And if you don't want to use LSI keywords, by all means, don't. I prefer entities because I think they're juiced up. And the thing I like to understand is that entities aren't available for everyone. They're only in 12 languages. So if you're doing SEO for a Vietnamese website, you don't get entities. But it turns out entities and LSI lists have a lot of overlap. So if you're in a language that doesn't have access to entities, use LSI and you'll probably get a lot of them, if not most of them.
Yep.
And so, yeah, the people who say LSI is, stupid, well, they have the luck of being able to SEO in US English. And not every SEO has that luxury to have all those US English tool sets. And so if you don't account for that, then you're just kind of, I think a bad person in terms of this debate. So, you got to help people that aren't necessarily in the top 12 languages.
Right.
What do you think, Clint? I know you had a lot of opinions.
Yeah. First off, we wouldn't even be talking about it if Brian Dean didn't make multi-millions of dollars. And the Twitterverse, mainly from what I could tell, is just two people. Bill Slosky was one, and some other guy that hides behind the Darth Vader persona. We're just bagging on him because of LSI and a couple other things. So essentially he's calling him immoral and stuff. And to me, it's just professional jealousy. It's so blatantly obvious. And Bill was even called out on it, but he's an old craggy fucker and he's stuck to his guns. And everyone was just like, all right, dude. So that's, at the end of the day, that's where that discussion came from. But I found it ironic. When I even mentioned that LSI keywords was a strategy and had nothing to do with latent semantic indexing, they said, no, it's not a strategy, it's a method or approach. And I told them, isn't it ironic that you're using a thesaurus to change what I'm saying? You're saying the exact same thing. Use synonyms of strategy, method, and approach to counter my argument that it's not a strategy.
Yeah, if you really look closely, they have no argument at all.
It's purely, like you said, it's purely they're academics. My guess is most people who make this argument don't even practice SEO or haven't even tried the strategy of LSI keywords before the content editors brought in the entity stuff and topical analysis, etc., which is at its core, like you said, the same. You're just using a different data set to optimize and do that stuff with.
It's like the argument is a nested spin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my favorite is, well, I haven't seen any testing that proves that it works. And my best response for all those people is really, why does anyone have to prove to you that it doesn't work? Why don't you prove to us that it doesn't work? You're the one so adamant that they're not using the strategy of LSI keywords inside of the algorithm. Ergo, if you apply LSI keywords, something in the rankings, something in the ranking factors, something in the algorithm is responding positively. You're not proving otherwise. So
yeah, and I call BS on the there's no proof argument. It's they're unwilling to look at proof.
Yeah.
There are multiple SEO testing groups who have tested this with single variable testing. You can correlate this. There are multiple tools out there that can correlate factors. So you can correlate it in the field for real websites and real keywords. There is testimonials from dozens, if not hundreds of SEOs who are out there using these strategies and ranking, and they have their testimony as to what types of results they're getting. So, when people say there's no evidence that's, patently untrue, they're just being very stubborn and not willing to look at it.
Yeah.
And
they're more looking at it. They're aligning themselves with latent semantic indexing, the actual process of latent semantic indexing, and saying they're not using that as a ranking factor, and they're discounting any other application of the acronym LSI. So there's no possible way LSI and LSI keywords can be a thing because latent semantic indexing keywords aren't a thing. So ergo LSI keywords doesn't work. That's the basis of their argument, and it's just dumb.
Yeah, it's not using the LSI keywords the way our industry uses and defines that.
Yeah.
And they're just ignoring that and going with the co-opted academic thing that's unrelated, and that's just dumb.
It's just they're implying that you can't have two different meanings for the same word. A truck, i.e. a Ford truck, or a truck, a thing that you can move boxes around in a warehouse. And apparently one of those is not right, and we should make a new word for one of those things. How dare you?
Well, hopefully we didn't spoil the crap out of your podcast.
I mean,
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that you can bring that up once a year, and it'll be an awesome conversation.
Yeah, it's a good one to revisit. We've debunked those claims dozens of times now over years and years, and they never bring anything new. They make the same old claims over and over again. It's not like they have new information that suddenly changes everything. They just repost their side of the argument minus the rebuttals, and they call that good journalism.
Proof. Because Google doesn't have a patent on it, and John Mueller's explicitly said that LSI keywords is not a ranking factor. So ergo, LSI keywords is.
Yeah, and what has John Mueller ever said was a ranking factor?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, John
give
Mueller
me
would
the
be
list.
if he did.
All right. And if you can't come up with one, if you can't come up with a list of things that John Mueller says is a ranking factor, an actual testable thing, don't tell me like, amazing content. If you do that, don't even reply.
Oh, here it goes. Core Web Vitals. It's Core Web Vitals. You said Core Web Vitals is a ranking factor. So
yeah, we test
LSI keywords not a ranking.
Yeah. So it's just crazy. It's a ridiculous argument. Test it for yourself. The main thing, you don't have to believe us. Test it for yourself. SEO this week. Guess what Clint covered? So be sure and check it out. Clint had a great take on the whole thing, went into detail on it. SEOthisweek.com. Anything else you wanted to announce, Clint?
No, I think we're all right. If you guys have any other news sources you like to follow that are directly related to SEO, help me out. Send me the links. I appreciate it.
Excellent. How should they reach you?
You can go to SEOthisweek.com or the Bookface, the Twitter, Reddit. I'm on all of them now. So
excellent. All right. So Lee Witcher has this course. He's doing his third round of this 8-week training. And I've taken it twice, and I absolutely love it. And so the way his training kind of works is you kind of go through his lessons each week, and then you do the homework for those lessons on a website you're trying to rank, and you share your results with the group. And it's amazing because you see what everybody gets out of the lessons as the training progresses. And in week 2, I picked a moderately easy keyword, but there was some big authority brands ranking for it. But I think any professional SEO would say that that keyword I targeted was moderately easy, but there's a few noteworthy authority brands to contend with. And by week 5, I was number 1 with a new website, both in Bing and in Google, using only the lessons taught in the course. And I'm planning on doing it again in this next round. I've got a harder keyword that I'm going to do and a really hard keyword that I'm going to do. And I'm going to see how far I can push his methods. And not everybody gets the same results, but by and large, people in Lee's course have gotten pretty good results. Now, the bad news about Lee's course, all right, there's a downside here. It's not for everyone. And even if you want to get in, you might not get in because you need to be a Quora user to begin with. So if you don't know how to use Quora, you're probably not going to get accepted into this course. But if you want to learn more about it, you can see his page. Lee, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'll slightly disagree with you on one thing. You don't have to be a Quora user, although you will be during the 8 weeks. You need to be intermediate to advanced level SEO, and I don't accept everybody. You have to apply. We have to get on a call and evaluate sort of where you are and whether you're a right fit for the training or not. But it is a training where for 8 weeks you have me showing you, guiding you, and this time you're also going to get to see I'm starting with a brand new website week 1, and you get to watch me apply the lessons with you week after week. Even though normally when I SEO something, I apply them all at once, but that'll be fun to do it. And because you're in there with some, intermediate and advanced SEOs, there's a lot of interesting crosstalk that goes on in there, a lot of sharing of information, techniques, methods, results. So it's good stuff, and I'm proud of the work that's been done there. And it all started, there's one piece that it started with, which was about a year ago. I think it may have been on Fight Club. Ted was asking some testers, what percentage of your tests do you publish? And I might have been the low ball there at 5% of all the tests that I do get published. This is where the other 95% goes, or a big chunk of it goes into the tested SEO training. So this stuff is the stuff that's working right now. It shows you how to diagnose where you're not ranking, where you're weak, and we do use Quora, and we do use Quora in some ways that are a little bit different than the way Ted built it for. So anyway, it's a good time. If you have any questions about it, go to the testedseotraining.com. You can look at the information there, decide if it's right to you. If it is, reach out to me. The information is there on the page.
Yeah, and a lot of fairly prominent SEOs have already taken his course. So in most groups, if you ask about it publicly, odds are good you can find someone who can come in and tell you about their experience. So you don't have to take it from us. You can probably just reach out in your group and ask if there's any comments on it. And I highly recommend you check it out. Definitely, if you are a Quora user and you're looking to take it to that next level, this is a great example of taking it to that next level. All right. So with that, we'll get back to just talking SEO. And so we'll start with Carolyn's question. What's up on the weather tool? Are we in or out of an update? Well, we're always in an update of some sort. So I think Google is generally honest, saying they're always doing something. What I've seen a lot of lately is new features in the search results and HTML updates in search. And those have been breaking tools and things of that nature. I have seen some ranking volatility, but most of it kind of brought things that, got shifted down back up for me, but I haven't done a deep analysis. What have you been seeing, Clint?
Yeah, there's a lot of correction, but it's not like you're not going to see major corrections, fine tuning correction from what I can tell. So just kind of be patient with it for a couple of days, let it settle. But I think it's safe to go ahead, in my opinion, and start making changes based off of what happened.
And Carolyn, how has indexing been looking as of late?
Well, it's still interesting. I have to give it that. I haven't seen in like the last 2 weeks, haven't seen a lot of discovery crawls for sure. Seen a lot of refresh type things. And just today, I started to see almost like more, like robots text pulls and things like, checking for things that are normally there, like sitemaps and robots and that ads.txt file that most of us don't have. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing. And so it's actually giving me some, I hate to say it, new ideas for possible ways to poke out like what the heck is happening. Is Google just stingy, or is there something else, manually, mechanically broken, maybe through Search Console or something?
I haven't tried new URLs, but I did update a few existing URLs, and I was seeing about 24-hour indexing on already indexed pages. So if you're updating pages, I think the climate is fairly speedy. But I don't know what it's like. And I've heard from a few other SEOs about getting 24-hour page updates. But
They're very
yeah,
generous with those refresh crawls. You can get them pretty fast. But the others are, that's kind of where my interest is going, is like, okay, I get it. You love what you already know, but what is it about this? So that's
yeah,
what I'm seeing. Yeah.
exactly. And so I've started getting back into some testing. So I have a few like small things that I'm looking into, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about testing, just to see what people feel comfortable sharing about, what they're testing so far this year. So one of the things I'm testing is I've noticed in the volatility tool that there's often, description variants, and Google will say, this summary text in the search result ranks at, 13, but this summary text tends to rank at 5. And so I'm updating my meta description tag based on these clues that Google is dropping to see if I can't get the pages to move. Now, I already know the answer for like test pages is yes, you can get them to move. But the answer for like real pages for real keywords, how strong is it? Can it make that real world scenario move, or is it just a lot weaker than that? So I have a test working for that, and I'm waiting to see what it's going to do. And what are you guys testing? Is there anything you are comfortable sharing?
The one I'm doing now, I'm doing it with Bieta, and we're looking at indexing of pages and messing around with the different languages that we're building these single variable tests out of, and see if there's a way to get around. We're actually getting them in the index, but they're not ranking for any of the content. So not the target keyword, not random strings, not paragraphs, but they are there in the index. So we're trying to figure out what is going on with that. How can we ensure that our pages will come up as both indexed and rank for something? So that's what we're fighting.
Cool. Yeah, that's always a good one. I spent the last year or more doing, closer looks at indexing, and I think there's definitely a lot to learn still there, and especially in understanding Google's volatility.
Yeah.
What about
And,
you?
I'm trying to break it down and make it a little bit easier too, right? So you said at one point during a conversation that you found 100 different various states of SEO or indexing. I'm just trying to break it down to like, here's 6 easy ones that you can go in there and analyze the URL and go, all right, this is where this one's stuck at. And let's see if we can do X, Y, and Z to get it unstuck.
Yeah, if you're trying to diagnose why a specific URL isn't indexed for a keyword, there's a lot of specific reasons that cause that state. Like, you might be blocking with your meta robots, you might be blocking in a search console setting, you might have intermittent 500 errors. There are just a lot of reasons a URL won't rank for a keyword. And so if you're going to diagnose, and that's the reason I was diving into it, is I was creating software to diagnose the reasons why a page wouldn't be ranking for a keyword. And I got to about 74 different scenarios coded. And I realized, wow, this is going to take a lot. There's going to be a lot of things in this. And then I started to have second thoughts because, how many SEOs are actually going to buy a tool that can diagnose that? And my guess, unfortunately, is probably the number of SEOs that would use a tool like that is very, very low, because it's a very technical SEO type of thing. But who knows? And that tool, that prototype, eventually transformed into what is the volatility tool that does see some adoption. Same technology stack. So if you're going to build a indexing diagnostic tool, you might as well start by building a volatility tool. Lee, anything that you feel like sharing?
Yeah, I'll share what. I won't necessarily share all the results, but I'll share
that's
what.
all I'm asking is just, what.
I was having actually a conversation with Carolyn yesterday, and looking at the past several months, it's been indexing's been spotty, indexing's been broken. So on a lot of the standard tests that we do, random alpha pages on test sites, orphan pages, I was like, well, let's just wait until, Google gets its shit together. And that hasn't happened. And so looking at it, there's a couple of reasons that I can think of that, maybe the primary drivers of that. One is maybe Google's gotten really, really good at identifying low quality pages. That would certainly sweep out most of our test pages, but it also doesn't explain the problem, of other people's, a lot of other people's indexing woes. A secondary one is that Google has some parts of its system that are broken. And if it's intermittently broken, it would be hard for them to diagnose and fix, and it would be hard for us to test to figure out what that was and how to work around it. So really, it is a challenge to figure out why certain pages aren't getting indexed. So I'm going to have to jump into that arena, like Clint was talking about. I know Carolyn's going to be in there, and some other people are going to be in there, because we have to get the indexing thing figured out, not just for test pages, but also for live sites, because that's a challenge. The other thing that I'm diving back into is YouTube testing. A lot of times when Google's having problems, indexing pages, they don't have problems indexing videos. And there's a lot of things in there that I can test, retest, and then I have some interesting usage ideas for that afterwards. Same thing is true with traffic testing. I'm jumping back into traffic testing again to reconfirm a lot of the stuff that I've learned in the past and some new ideas as well. So while Google's not taking, the standard test pages on a consistent basis, I'll go test in other arenas.
Excellent. We have another question here. What are some on-page factors people usually ignore? The number one on-page factor that most SEOs usually ignore is keyword density. It takes a lot of effort to measure it and to tune for it. It's easy to mess up. Like if you tune for keyword density on your page and then you tune for entities later, you've basically ruined your keyword density tuning. So your order of operations of how you do SEO can totally ruin your density tuning. And as a result, a lot of SEOs don't bother; they just skip it. But it really does seem to matter. Like I recently spoiled a page that was ranking for a big term. I spoiled its keyword density, adding a bunch of content, and it fell from like 13 all the way down to 33. I fixed the keyword density, and it went right back to 13. And, that kind of matches historically what I've seen in testing. And that happened for a significant keyword, in the real world with real websites and real competition. So, I'd bet that most SEOs are ignoring keyword density just out of the gate. And if you don't believe in keyword density and you're like, Google's too smart for that, my advice is prove things for yourself. Like I love being proved wrong. So if you have a good experiment to the contrary, let's talk. But odds are, I think if you test it well, you'll probably see that it's probably something you should not ignore. Another thing that SEOs often ignore is factor diversity. And the reason they ignore factor diversity is extremely few SEO tools have the ability to measure factor diversity in an authoritative way. And so if you're limited to tools that only use a dozen factors or do arbitrage on API data or things of that nature, you're going to be very limited as to your visibility into factor diversity issues. So, that's another thing that people just ignore. And then there's, just things like goose egg SEO. There's an SEO Fight Club episode that talks about goose egg SEO. And that's all about getting all of your pages on your website engaged in generating organic traffic. And it is literally the easiest SEO you can do at the page level, because all you're doing, we're not even going after rankings in that strategy. All you're doing is going to get, a single organic visitor to every page each month. Turn those zeros into ones. Watch that episode. It's amazing what you can do with that goose egg SEO strategy. It's very important for online retailers. And what you'll find is that if you raise that minimum bar for a website, instead of trying to raise the top bar, raise the bottom bar, bring the floor up a bit. what you find is everything you do for the highly competitive stuff just becomes easier. And so if you have all your pages having some sort of quality signal, then, it just helps. Clint, what do you think SEOs are ignoring?
LSI keywords.
Yeah, definitely.
I think they're ignoring backlinks too much. And it's the marketing machine has kind of got SEOs afraid of backlinks. And I mean, we've had an SEO manager, he quit because he didn't want to build backlinks to clients' websites. And like, that doesn't make any damn sense whatsoever. But it's kind of where we're at now. And I think us as SEOs need to open our minds up a little bit about the types of backlinks we need and the definition of relevancy of backlinks and where that relevancy comes from, and figure all that stuff out and get back into doing it. Because I've seen more often than not websites that were ranking great and they were doing it with minimal amount of backlinks, and then people go in there and drop not a large amount, like 100 backlinks, and ruin their rankings just with a little bit of bad backlinks because they didn't have any of their own to protect their website from that kind of stuff. And it doesn't really take all that much these days when no one's building a decent backlink profile to go in there and essentially create a negative SEO campaign that you might not even know is going on because you haven't sought out your own link profile and built that out a little bit.
So, Lee, what do you think people are ignoring?
I like to go back just to the basics, and I've had a number of conversations with folks around this recently. There are a lot of SEO tests out there, things like keyword density or LSI or any of these other things, and they're known that IMG has tests, SIA has tests, and there's a long history, and a lot of the major factors, the big levers, are there and they're known. And yet what happens is when you're talking to people, you look at something and say, oh, you should add LSI to your page. Oh, that's not a ranking factor. I'm like, well, who the hell told you that? Where'd you get that information from? People aren't acting on the basic known information about what the top factors truly are, like keyword density. Those things are just because they're not looking at the data. So most of the time, it's not some complex, convoluted, the newest, greatest course, tool, training, guru method. It's just plain old H tags, it's plain old backlinks, keywords, entities, all of those sort of things are there. And people are just ignoring it because of their own beliefs or, relying on really bad information. So I think that, a lot of people could benefit from just looking at the tested data, the information, a lot of the stuff that comes out on things like Fight Club and just acting on it, trying it for themselves and testing those theories that they're exposed to. If you think that LSI is not a thing, go add some to your page, see what happens.
Yeah, my career in SEO dramatically changed when I started testing. And there's two things about what I was doing that really changed everything for me in SEO. One thing was that the business, I was an in-house SEO for a large online retailer. The business had like 15 money sites, 15 different stores, and some were massive, but some were small and kind of failing to, really succeed. And so I used one of the failing stores as my playground, and it became a safe place to fail. And most SEOs do not have a safe place to fail. And so if you're operating in a context where your next mistake is going to result in you being fired, you're not going to learn what works and what doesn't work very efficiently. You're going to be too scared to try anything for the sake of learning. Because I could take one of the poor performing stores and run SEO experiments, I could adopt a strategy where I'd only migrate the successes to the bigger stores. And so, time and time again on the bigger stores, I was hitting nothing but home runs. Did it mean that everything that I was doing worked? No, it's just all my failures were in a safe place and they never saw the light of day beyond that sandbox. All my successes, they always hit the bottom line for the business. They were high visibility. I climbed the corporate ladder in under a year to having a seat at the executive table. I ended up being a director of business development. I worked with the entire organization. And all it took was those two things, doing some basic testing on what works and migrating the successes to where it counts the most, and having a safe place to fail. And so if you can somehow get into that mode, then you can really get into, testing on real sites and learning real SEO. But if the next thing you do is going to plummet a website down 13 spots and you're going to get fired for it, you're in a really tough spot. So I would recommend trying to find a safe place to fail. What do you think, Clint?
Stupid unmute. Yeah, I totally agree. You gotta have. I mean, I do. Mine is my agency site. So if you have an agency site, and I even use that for testing stuff. So, and then I have a bunch of domains for the single variable testing, obviously. But you don't even need all that. you don't even have to test to the academic level that a lot of us in the groups do. To find individual ranking factors, testing your title tags and testing your H1s and testing your outlines and testing your content outlines and your employment of entities. You can do all that stuff on your test site before you mess around with your bigger money sites. And if you have that and you have the different ideas of testing, you can expand on that a whole lot more and learn more and become less of a I won't necessarily say sheep because that's kind of harsh, but less of a follower of talking heads like Ted, myself, and Lee, and Josh Brzezinski, and whoever else, Craig Campbell's and Chris Palmer's. You can move away from them and just kind of think of your own things and your own ideas, or even how to take other people's concepts and mold those into something new and unique to you and your business that other SEOs aren't doing. That could be the secret sauce and how you stay on top.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can prove it for yourself, if you can disprove it for yourself, you're going to know some information you can hopefully trust, because hopefully you're not going to lie to yourself. Some people do. Lee, how do people sometimes lie to themselves? Aren't you planning on a show on this topic at some point?
Yeah, I mean, you can have data can mislead you a lot of different ways, and a lot of the data that we look at, I see tests that are published, I see studies that are published, I see core reports and things like that, where people are looking at data and they don't realize how that data can fool them, how they can reach the wrong conclusions by just assuming certain things about, the data. And so, yeah, I'm going to put together one on that, because I think if you're a more educated consumer of SEO analysis and testing, then you'll be better off. If you know where potentially there are issues or challenges to what's being presented, you'll know when to be a little more skeptical and when, man, that looks good. I better, I'm going to go and try to roll that into some of my own stuff. So yeah, I'm definitely going to do a show on that.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So with that, I think we're all out of questions. So we'll leave it here and we'll pick it up next week. I want to thank everyone for joining us again. If you are a Quora user, a Quora Lite user, or an SEO volatility user, be on the lookout this week. There will be updates for all three of those. And let me just go back here. If you are interested in learning more about Lee's course, check it out at this website. He calls it the worst sales page ever made, and it could quite possibly be that. But it's also being copied all around now because people really like it. And so, if anything, learn from his sales page, even if you don't take the course. So thanks again, everyone. I'll give Lee the last word here since it's his course I have on the screen.
Yeah, just go to it. And if you're interested in it, reach out. I can tell you that, one of the tenets, and it popped up here today, is I will tell you from week one, don't believe a damn word that I tell you. Just go take what I'm doing, apply it to your own sites, come back, and the stuff works. So, love to have more people on board. We're just starting the promotion, and we're closing down in 2 weeks. So there's only going to be 2 weeks you have to hear about this stuff. So.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.